Welcome. Thank you for being with us today. We'd like to share with you the process for which the International Council for Harmonization, ICH, evaluates new topics and prepares or revises guidelines.
ICH guidelines are the cornerstone for a shared global understanding of the technical requirements for pharmaceuticals for human use. For example, ICH guidelines establish globally agreed upon requirements for the design and conduct of clinical trials that are intended to support applications for marketing authorization.
Clinical trials are increasingly global, as illustrated by the diverse distribution of clinical trials across the world on this map.
Clinical trials are fundamental to generating reliable evidence that informs our decision-making on how therapeutics work and if they are safe and effective.
Well, design and conducting clinical trials are extremely important tools to researchers, healthcare providers, regulators, policymakers, and most importantly, patients.
The globality of clinical trials and therapeutic development in general makes working together across the world a practical necessity. Therefore, the ICH is more essential than ever, as illustrated by the quote from Dr. Sweeney of the EMA.
We all use data generated in each other's regions. So wherever in the world we are based, we rely for the majority of innovation, development, and supervision of medicines on regulators, scientists, and citizens in other regions. As regulators, researchers, and patients, we have to work together. That is why ICH is so important to all of us.
The expanding ICH participation, as shown on this map, includes regulators, industry, non-governmental organizations such as WHO and the Gates Foundation. This map reflects the consensus that working together to develop a shared understanding on technical requirements for pharmaceuticals for human use is imperative to facilitate innovations and advances in medicine and technology while protecting global public health.
ICH guidelines are the foundation for a shared global understanding on the design and conduct of clinical trials. The ICH community is keenly aware of emerging technologies and innovative clinical trial designs and is eager to facilitate such innovations while safeguarding the public.
This slide shows the process for ICH to endorse new topics and to establish an expert working group to develop new guidelines. A formal expert working group made up of ICH members and observers is established. Then the group develops a guideline or revises an existing one.
The regular process provides an opportunity for public input at step 3. When appropriate, the ICH may also organise stakeholder engagement meetings, such as the one held for ICH E8 General Considerations for Clinical Studies in 2019 during the step 3 consultation period. For the ongoing work on ICH E6 Good Clinical Practice, stakeholder representatives are included in some meetings of the expert working group to provide input. Additionally, public web conferences such as this one are held to provide more transparency about the process and the current status of the work.
Now let's briefly discuss the ongoing EWG work on one of the most impactful ICH guidelines, ICH E6 for Good Clinical Practice.
ICH E6 Good Clinical Practice, GCP, is a critical guideline as it describes the responsibilities and expectations of stakeholders in the conduct of clinical trials.
The current version of E6 is referenced as E6R2, indicating that is the second version of this guideline. The subject of current EWG work is to develop a third updated version of these guidelines, E6R3.
ICH E6 GCP covers aspects of monitoring, reporting, and archiving of clinical trials, as well as encouraging the implementation of improved and more efficient approaches to GCP, such as risk proportionality, while continuing to ensure protection of human participants.
Take, for example, the important link between ICH E8 that focuses on the design of trials and ICH E6 that focuses on the conduct of clinical trials. Just as design and conduct are intertwined, it is recommended that the two guidelines are viewed as a continuum and are utilised together.
As shown in this slide, the ICH E family, or the efficacy guideline family, is intended to be considered together as they complement each other. In addition to E6 GCP, another example of a critical guideline is E9, Statistical Principles for Clinical Trials.
The slide shows the guidelines in the current E family. This table is included in E8 guidelines for reference. Other guidelines are in development to join the E family, such as E19 on safety data collection and E20 on adaptive clinical trials.
ICH E6R3 will comprise principles and 2 annexes. The principles are meant to be overarching and applicable across clinical trial designs and as the technology around us evolves. In acknowledgement of the wide impact of ICH E6, the ICH Management Committee made the work in progress draft version of the principles public in April of this year.
Ultimately, the principles in Annex 1 will reflect the content and scope of the current E6R2 and will replace it. After the development of the principles in Annex 1, the content of Annex 2 that provides additional consideration for non-traditional or innovative trials will be determined and the work on it will proceed.
Given the wide impact of E6 and the large variety of stakeholders affected by this guideline, the ICH Management Committee approved an engagement plan for the EWG. The plan includes holding public web conferences and engaging with academic experts as the work on the guideline proceeds.
The expert working group also conducted an in-depth analysis of all available stakeholder input from surveys, academic literature, and other sources. This web conference is a part of expert working group's continuous outreach and engagement efforts.
We all know that clinical trials are necessary to generate reliable evidence to provide better outcomes for patients.
As you saw in slide 2, clinical trials are increasingly global. The ICH provides a unique and essential mechanism to work together on the development of responsive guidelines that facilitate innovation and protect the public.
With the publication of the principles and web conference, such as this one, we are taking great steps to engage more stakeholders and to incorporate ways to enhance transparency, because of the critical role of ICH E6 in establishing harmonized global practice to clinical trial conduct.
We are showing the draft version of the principles as a part of its approach. Once the ICH E6 achieves step 3, formal public consultation and wider input will be invited on the principles and Annex 1.
Would like to thank the ICH E6 EWG and the Clinical Trials Transformation Initiative for their hard work on this project.
As a part of the E6 Expert Working Group, we're delighted to work on this important guideline for the services of our community.
Thank you for being with us today.